Thanks, everyone, and thanks to our speakers and moderators from this morning. We've had a rich few days to consider what we mean by education at a crossroads, and many of you have so generously shared your insights and perspectives. And what's become clear is that when we say education is at a crossroads, this reflects that humanity itself is at a crossroads. Technology, geopolitics, demographics, and climate are changing in rapid and destabilizing ways. So how can education be a stabilizing force for humanity in the face of this disruption, and not just be a stabilizing force, but also help us navigate the path ahead? What I'll attempt to do here is to share some key takeaways from the summit yesterday and today, which can serve as navigation points on that path. And with the full disclaimer that I won't be able to do justice to all that we've heard and learned. But to my first takeaway, which is this: break free from predetermined paths in and beyond education. We heard from our inspiring trio of panelists this morning and our moderators that for so many young people, their paths in and beyond education are predetermined by expectations of what they should go on to do and become. For some, these expectations are highly restrictive, and we heard from Angie that for many girls, the path is fixed for marriage and motherhood. And we heard from Usha how young people from a certain background often face low expectations for what they can go on to achieve. And then there are the well-intentioned expectations around traditional paths that are seen as in young people's best interest on the basis that these paths will set them up for life and for their future security. But in an era of unpredictability, we need to break free from these predetermined paths and expectations to change the default settings for what young people can do and become through their education, because those default settings belong to another era. And this brings me to my next takeaway, which is prepare learners for uncertainty on the path ahead. We need to prepare young people to learn how to learn through acquiring critical thinking skills, for example, and importantly, for them to learn how to adapt, and to navigate ambiguity. Because there is so much uncertainty in what lies ahead and what the landscape of jobs will look like even a few years from now. Peter Materu and Martha Lane Fox yesterday made the point that it is critical that we prepare young people for the future of work, which means that we need to equip them to navigate this new and uncharted terrain, to be ready for the crossroads they face when they graduate from school or college. And as Rukmini said, we need to prepare learners not just for exams, but for life, to navigate uncertainty and to build a sense of self that is grounded in place, language, and connection. And so to my third takeaway, which is recognize who can be our guides on this journey. We need to appreciate the importance of having leaders on the path ahead who young people can follow, who they can relate to as role models, who've been through what they're going through. Usha encouraged us to recognize the power of lived experience and how this is such a valuable dimension to the education process in enabling young people to find connection. We've heard examples today of how the power of lived experience can be unlocked. Rukmini described the Leaders of Practice in the Teaching at the Right Level program and how these young leaders are convincing older master trainers of the value of new pedagogical approaches and inspiring a renewed joy and interest in teaching and learning. And we heard from Angie and saw the film about the learner guides, young people who've graduated from school and who are now turning around to help others in their communities as mentors and role models. And these success stories are often hard-won. Why? Because local knowledge and the expertise that comes from lived experience is too often undervalued as a result of narrow, elitist views of who is the so-called expert. Take the learner guides that you saw in the film. When we developed the curriculum that the learner guides deliver in schools that Angie spoke about, we did so through a process of co-creation between young people, their communities, and technical experts from a global education company. And it was a heavy lift to ensure those technical experts truly appreciated the value of what young people and their communities were bringing to the table and didn't limit their engagement to a mere consultation exercise. And in the end, we set up an editorial committee made up of a representative group of young people, and every section of that curriculum went to them for their review and final sign-off. Young people were positioned as the experts, and it paid off. They had a curriculum that spoke to them and in which they saw themselves reflected. And in this new era, we need to reframe what we mean by the expert in education, not as the holders of knowledge, but as guides, which brings me to my next takeaway. An African proverb which says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. As Bassem and Kieran put it yesterday in the panel on leadership, education is a community endeavour. We have a collective responsibility to navigate this new era in education, as this will have profound consequences for all our futures and for those of our children. And this responsibility is held at the global and national level, but also at the local level, where as a community we need to get behind teachers and school leaders who are carrying a heavy burden at this crossroads. The results of the latest Teaching and Learning International Survey, just released by the OECD, revealed that while teachers expressed a high degree of satisfaction in their job, this was in a stark contrast to whether they feel valued as a profession. Only 2 in 10 teachers say they feel valued. And this wasn't helped when earlier this year a certain global tech billionaire publicly predicted that teachers in classrooms will be replaced by AI within the next decade, dismissing the value of teachers. By contrast, Juho Lee here pointed out that far from replacing them, AI can be used to reduce the burden on teachers by solving for repetitive tasks like grading and routine assessments, and so freeing teachers' time for mentoring, listening, and yes, guiding. In this way, technology can be deployed in service of human connection and not as a replacement. And so to my next takeaway, which captures the sentiments expressed so profoundly yesterday, that successful AI is intentional and human-led. If we're to succeed in AI being human-led, then we need to move beyond AI literacy to AI competency in education, which Dr. Miao so powerfully advocated for. Miao described the triangular pedagogical relationship that we're moving towards, involving the student, teacher, and AI. Human AI competencies for both students and teachers are critical to this triangular relationship. They will be the roadblock at the education crossroads if we do not succeed in cultivating them, or the accelerator if we do. And we need to think about how we build these AI competencies, but also how we assess them, not just in terms of outcomes, as in conventional educational assessment, but in terms of readiness, as in job-related AI skills. We must also consider how we embed equity and ethics in the development of AI competencies. As Martha Lane Fox pointed out, we need to grapple with the principle of equity in AI at all levels, not just in access to AI and technology, which of course is a major source of inequity around the world, but the principle of equity within AI itself. Otherwise, we'll be increasingly overwhelmed by the outputs of large language models that are limiting and biased. We cannot address this issue of inequity at a superficial level through NGO initiatives in education. This needs to be solved at the level of AI infrastructure with the big tech companies. It means we need global governance mechanisms that can enforce equity by ethical design. And this does not mean containing innovation in AI design, but we do need guardrails. And speaking of guardrails, brings me to my next takeaway, which is this, that language is a bridge to belonging. We heard this yesterday from Stefania Giannini of UNESCO and from Rukmini and Usha this morning. And it resonates with the work of Mamadou Lee, our 2025 Yidan Prize for Education Development laureate, and with the work of Professor Kwame Acheampong, advisor to the Yidan Prize, whose work underlines that when young people learn in a familiar language, they engage more deeply, relate learning to their world, and grow in confidence and agency. For far too long, too many young people around the world have had to start school in their second or even third language, placing them at a severe disadvantage. They are being, as Angie says, left behind. Yet could AI ultimately provide the solution to multilingual foundational learning? If Dr. Miao's vision comes to pass, then yes, we will have local AI models trained on local language and culture and ultimately developed by local AI talent. Rather than the AI colonization that we see playing out today, Could AI, in fact, solve for one of the most pressing issues in foundational learning, that of multilingualism, and actually strengthen young people's sense of self, grounded in language, place, and connection? A sense of self which anchors them to be able to engage with the wider world. And so to my next takeaway, which is a question for us all to consider. What does it mean to be a global citizen? Andreas Schleicher posed this as the big question of our times, a point echoed by Becky Francis, who said that we need more emphasis in education on thoughtful citizenship. So what are the skills and attributes young people need to develop to be thoughtful, engaged global citizens? I spoke earlier about the AI competencies advocated by Dr. Miao, and I would add to this the importance of being able to navigate complexity, which is relevant to the work of Yuri Wilensky, this year's Yidan Prize for Education Research laureate, in empowering learners worldwide to navigate complexity through accessible agent-based modeling. But fundamentally, it is the attributes of empathy, creativity, and critical thinking that are coming increasingly to the fore as cornerstones of humanity, of being a global citizen, to be nurtured through education. The ability to see the world through different lenses and to see ourselves in the mirror of others. How we teach and nurture these skills and attributes, how we assess and value them, is where some of the big questions lie ahead. Andreas, you invited us in your opening keynote to consider the question, how can education make us human in the age of AI? I would suggest that from all that we've heard these last 2 days, we can also now turn this question around to consider it in the other direction. How can AI in education make us more human? Because our relationship with AI forces us to confront many of these issues at this crossroads in education, to find the point of harmony between education and between technology and humanity. And if we don't, Andreas gave us the stark warning that AI could wash away the very foundations of humanity. It could wash away the path ahead. Which brings me to my next takeaway. Education is a site of global cooperation. No country can face alone today's disruptions caused by technology, demographics, inequality, and climate. As Professor Zhu said, future education must be a collaborative effort of the global community. And High-Level Envoy Tiam, speaking on yesterday's panel on collaboration, showed us how the Global Partnership for Education as a global fund and multilateral partnership is the example of how we can come together as a global education community. Laura Savage emphasized that it is vital for this community to join forces at this time to make the case for education and not allow the fact that education is complex to be a reason for governments or donors to deprioritize or disengage from it. Indeed, we need to embrace education's complexity, and we need to embrace education's complex interconnection with health, climate, technology, and economic growth. Because it is by engaging with this complexity, with these interconnections, that we will find the solutions to humanity's most pressing challenges. Peter Materu made the point that education is often positioned as a social service, a public good, which is limiting, because education needs to be recognized as an investment with the greatest economic, social, and environmental returns, not just for individuals, but for all of us. And so to my final takeaway. Education can steer us towards a more equitable, just, and hopeful world. It can, yes, but only if we are prepared to steer education through this crossroads. And this is where I believe the Yidan Prize has such an important role to play. The Yidan Prize is a lighthouse illuminating research and practice in education that is transformative and future-oriented. It is a beacon for a better world, lighting the way ahead. Professor Zhu said yesterday that every honor in education should be responded to with greater educational responsibility. In his case, he put the entire Education Development Prize to establish the new Teachers Fund in China, which is now transforming teacher development. And the growing Yidan Prize community brings together individuals from different disciplines representing diverse perspectives and all united in our belief in the possibility of creating a better world through education. And like Professor Zhu, we take on the responsibility for making that happen. Finally, you may perhaps have wondered why I quoted an African proverb and why I've referenced Africa throughout my remarks. It's because Africa is at a major crossroads, with the fastest growing youngest population of any continent. And this could go down one of two paths. Either there will be generations of young people unskilled, without jobs and disaffected, which will fuel instability and insecurity across the continent and beyond. Or we will see the greatest demographic dividend of all time. The difference, the deciding factor, will be education. Next year, together with Mamadou Ly and his organisation ARED, also represented here by Awaka and Indura, we will host the Yidan Prize Conference in Africa in Senegal. And we will use this as an opportunity to illuminate the research and practice in education, the creativity and the innovation that is taking shape in and from the African continent, and that can be a beacon for what's possible in creating a better world through education. And we invite you all to join with us. And as we come to the close of this summit, I want to pay tribute to the Yidan Prize Foundation team here and to Bruce Au's leadership. I'm honoured to stand with them all. They give meaning to the saying that a small group of committed individuals really can pull off the extraordinary. So please join me in recognising them and in thanking all our speakers and moderators. Thank you.